shorter, so it's normal for their children to be short too. Tanggap na natin agad, di ba? But should really just give up dahil maliit ang lahi mo. To start off this session by sharing the truth about the stunting problem in the Philippines and to set the stage for why challenges against childhood nutrition persist in the country, it's all welcome Dr. Imelda Angeles Agdema, the Chief Science Research Specialist of the Food and Nutrition Research Institute, or FNRI. Dr. Agdema, good morning. Dr. Agdema, good morning. You're on for your presentation this morning. Yes, good morning. Can you hear me now? Hear you? Can you hear? Yes, to all the attendees and to the panelists of this Growth Watch forum, a pleasant morning to all. So allow me to actually share my screen in order for you to set the tone about the landscape of the nutritional status of Filipinos in the Philippines. So the title of my presentation is Stunting, the Persistent Problem Among Children, Challenges and Possible Impactful Actions. We all know that stunting is a phase of undernutrition, which is considered a major public health problem, specifically among children under 5 in many low and middle income countries, or what we call the LMIC. Stunting is identified by assessing a child's length or height. Now, for age less than 2 years, we can take the recombinant length for children, and for age 2 years and older, we can take the stunting height. And interpreted by comparing the measurements to the 2006 WHO or World Health Organization Child Growth Standards. It is characterized as low weight for height, and if a child is considered stunted if his or her height Z-score, height for age Z-score is below the -2 standard deviation. Likewise, children are considered severely stunted if their length or height is below the -3 standard deviation. Now, according to the World Health Organization, childhood stunting is one of the most significant impediments to human development, globally affecting approximately about 162 million children under the age of 5 years. Now, stunting is globally agreed critical window from conception until the first 2 years of life, that is actually 0 to 23 months, of which 70% of stunting occurs. Why is this? It is because linear growth is the most sensitive to environmentally modifiable factors. Now, stunting is also an irreversible outcome of inadequate nutrition and repeated bouts of infection during the first 1,000 days of life of child. And the process of stunting are actually determined and has been already published in many journals. These are actually encompassing poor maternal nutritional status, poor breastfeeding practices, improper and inadequate complementary feeding practices, and the repeated exposure to infections. Allow me to discuss this one by one. Now, as you all know, stunting results from a complex interaction of various factors, and these are poor nutrition. Poor nutrition can cause young children to become stunted. The interplay of poor nutrition and frequent infection leads to a vicious cycle of worsening nutritional status and increasing susceptibility to infection. Feeding practices. Inappropriate feeding practices may account for approximately one-third of malnutrition. Listed are factors related to feeding practices that is associated to under 5 stunting. First, early or late introduction of proper complementary food, pre-lactal feeding, food quality, poor food quality, and short duration of breastfeeding. Now, the recurrent of illness. The effects of recurrent or chronic illness could result in stunting. One factor associated with this is a large family size, which is also observed in the 2018 ENNS when we did our in-depth study on the persistent problem of stunting. And one of these is actually affecting, one of these factor is actually large family size. Now, a large family size increases the risk of overcrowding that will lead to spreading of diseases such as recurrent illness. Low awareness in each household to identify stunting. Low awareness of each household that could affect stunting could be also due to educational level of parents. Previous studies have reported that more children suffering from stunting were observed among mothers of low educational levels than those with high educational levels. Now, why are we so interested in solving stunting? The consequences of stunting is because linear growth failure serves as a marker of a wide variety of pathological disorders associated with increased morbidity and mortality from infections, specifically pneumonia, diarrhea, sepsis, meningitis, tuberculosis, and hepatitis, which suggests a generalized immune deficiency in children with severely stunted growth. Another is, aside from increased susceptibility to infections, stunting has always been reported to affect adult health and chronic disease risks. As studies of infants born with low birth weight have demonstrated consistent associations with elevated blood pressure, renal dysfunction, and altered glucose metabolism. Furthermore, stunting also affects school performance, as stunted children are reported to have significantly poorer school performance on short-term memory, retrieval ability, and visual spatial ability tests. Now, economic productivity for both sexes at the individual, household, and even the community level is also affected by stunting. Previous studies have shown associations between shorter adult stature and labor market outcomes, such as lower earnings and poor productivity. In the World Bank estimates, a 1% loss in adult height due to childhood stunting is associated with a 1.4% loss in economic productivity. Now, in our own data, as has been analyzed by FNRI and the Save the Children, you can see that the cost of hunger is actually about 328 billion pesos and about 166.50 billion loss of income due to the lower educational achievement. And another contributor is actually on the educational cost, wherein you can see about 1.23 billion and 116 billion lost productivity due to premature mortality or premature death. Now, losses from children suffering from undernutrition revealed that about 222 billion a year and over 29,000 Filipino children under 5 years die each year. An estimated 4.8 billion yearly is needed for very key interventions, especially during child's first 1,000 days. You can just imagine 4.8 billion. For every 49 pesos investment to address undernutrition, there is a return of investment of about 587 pesos. So you invest 49 pesos, the return of investment is about 587 pesos. Now, the prevalence or incidence in poor nutrition gives us a picture of the current nutrition situation of Filipinos, that we have yet to double our efforts to address the nutrition problems besetting the country to meet both the targets of the Philippine Plan of Action for Nutrition in 2022 and the Sustainable Development Goals in 2030. Specific to first, stage number 2, which is on ending hunger, achieving food security, and improve nutrition and promoting sustainable agriculture. It could also address SDG number 3, which is on ensuring healthy lives and promoting well-being for all age at all ages. Now, stunting in the Philippines. Undernutrition is common globally and prevalent in the Philippines. According to the UNICEF, one-third of the children in the Philippines are considered stunted. And this is also the data from the National Nutrition Survey of the Food and Nutrition Research Institute. The Philippines ranks fifth among the countries in East Asia and Pacific region with the highest stunting prevalence and one of the 10 countries in the highest number of stunted children in the world. The Food and Nutrition Research Institute, the premier research institute of the government in food and nutrition and other SNT services, is actually mandated to define the nutritional status of the Philippines or the Filipinos with reference to the malnutrition problems, its causes and effects. Now, after looking at the analyzing the nutrition situation, we develop and recommend policy options, strategies, programs, and projects which address the malnutrition problem for implementation by appropriate agencies. Currently, FNRID-UST is actually very popular in the Senate and in the Congress for the data that we obtain from the National Nutrition Survey as basis for the policies and the programs and strategies of the policymakers. We diffuse knowledge and technologies in food and nutrition and provide science and technology services to stakeholders, industries, households, communities, the local government executives. Now, we started the National Nutrition Survey way back in 1978 and currently in 2018, since if you can see the historical background, we conduct the National Nutrition Survey every 5 years, and in between the 5 years, we do update our data. However, in 2018, we changed the design as mandated or as requested by our policymakers and have this on a yearly basis from 2018 to 2022 on a 3-year rolling survey. Meaning to say every year from 2018, 2019, and 2020, we provide national estimates and of course we provide provincial estimates. So covering actually the 118 provinces and highly urbanized cities in the period of 3 years. However, if you can see the 2020, we did not push through with this because of the pandemic. And this year, 2021, by April, we will be deploying our teams to the different areas to cover the remaining 37 provinces which were not taken in 2020. So the components, we have the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and this represents the anthropometric or physical measurements, the biochemical representing actually the blood markers, and the clinical representing hypertension and so on. And the interview, we do collect socioeconomic status, food security, infant and young child feeding, and maternal nutrition. Now, as I have said in my previous statement, the survey results is being used by the different planning policy making bodies. This is apart from that, this is also used to address nutrition problems by crafting policies and interventions by different government agencies. This is used by NEDA for planning, targeting, and implementing nutrition and related intervention programs, goals, and commitment. This is also used by the NNC for monitoring and evaluation of impact of nutrition intervention programs. And this is used as a tool in advocacy for policy and development directions. So you can see that we are growing and the National Nutrition Survey is really evolving. In 2018, we covered 40 provinces, 2019, 40 provinces, and the 37 provinces will be actually collected this year. So let me now move on with the nutrition situation of 0 to 5 years old in the Philippines. Now you can see the trend from 2003 down to 2019, about 16 years. We started at 20.9 and we ended up in 2019 21.1 for stunting. And this is actually from the age 0 to 23 months or before reaching the age of 2 years. And you can see also underweight the red line. So you can, by this trend, you can already see that we are very moving slowly in terms of decreasing the prevalence of the different malnutrition problems in this age group. Looking at further by gender, you can see that most male is affected by underweight, and they are occurring in more in the rural areas and among those who are under the poor to poorest the wealth quintile. Now, comparative trends. I tried to really look at where is the peak of undernutrition during the age of 0 to 23 months. And if you can see here, underweight occurs at the age between 11 to 12 months. And I think this is signaling to us that there should be an appropriate intervention starting already at the age of 6 months, because at 7 months it's already becoming higher. The prevalence is becoming higher. And trying to look at stunting prevalence has a similar reflection as the underweight, and you can see also that boys are more affected than girls in the rural area and in the poor to poorest wealth quintile. If you see the trend, stunting is occurring already at the age of 4 months. You can see the blue here for the 2018, but in 2019 is occurring already at the age of 5 months. So in between these months, 4 to 6 months, there should already be a proper complementary food to be administered to these children so that we cannot attain the very high prevalence at the age of 23 months. Now, with wasting, the same scenario. The boys are affected more, and for wasting, there are more wasted children in the urban area as compared to those in the for stunting and underweight. And the same scenario if we compare it with the wealth status. So for overweight, you can see here that overweight is really occurring among boys in the urban area and among the rich to richest quintile of wealth quintile. And if you can see the previous slides, or if you can remember the previous slides, we are now facing double burden of malnutrition. Both over and undernutrition is a problem already in the Philippines. And you can see the trend here for the, if we lump our data or if we aggregate our data from age 0 to 59 months, this is between before reaching the age of 6 months. 6 years, yes, 6 months. Because 6 years, no? So you can see that the prevalence of stunting is already very high. It's 29%, and underweight is 19%. Wasting is 5.8%, and overweight and obesity is 2.9%. And there's no difference in terms of the occurrence of by gender, place of residence, and wealth status. The same holds true with stunting. Stunting is very high, 42.4% in the poorest areas, and occurring in the rural area. So for wasting, the same scenario is there. And overweight and obesity among our 0 to 59 months is about occurring in the rich to richest quintile and occurring in the urban area. So what can we get from this presentation? So food for thought, considering the sluggish decline in the prevalence of undernutrition, the call for innovative, high impact, area specific, and target focused policies and programs is needed to be abreast with the PPAN, or the Philippine Plan of Action for Nutrition, and the Sustainable Development Goal targets. Nutrition implementing agencies need to have more coherent policies and programs and ignite more efforts to further lower the prevalence of overweight children in our country. So what we are saying at FNRI is, beyond just collecting data, we need to actively use this data to make better choices and inform, advocate decision making at the policy level. This is what we are doing right now here at the Growth Forum. We must build some partnerships with food industries, no, to be more responsive and co-create actions for change. We are banking on this because the food industries actually occupy the tiger share for food supply in the country. We need data to be collected, collated, and used to build the dialogues, partnerships, actions, and accountability needed to end malnutrition in all its forms. We need to send off simple messages to parents and caregivers for home-based actions of child care and feeding practices, and let proper nutrition be in every home. Gone are the days that we use jargons in actually communicating to our parents. We have to use culturally and simple messages in order to actually uh, put these messages into their mind for actions. So ignite our actions and create more innovative strategies to address stunting, underweight and wasting, and also overweight and obesity, especially among areas, urban areas and rich households for overweight and obesity. And for stunting, underweight, and wasting, focus must be in the rural areas and in the poor households in order to end all forms of malnutrition by 2030. With this, I'd like to say thank you for listening.